He's going to talk to you about some feed opportunities. We're going to hear from Tyler Wallace about drone opportunities. Maddie Wheeler with Corteva. She's going to talk to you about Duracor and Novagraze. We'll also hear from John Paul at Greenpoint Ag. He's going to tell us about a few different things. He hasn't really decided what he's going to talk about. And then we're also going to hear about from Verdesian about some fertilizer opportunities and treatments into your fertilizer and how to maximize those results. Did anybody bring a soil sample today? No? Okay, we were doing a free soil sample. If you still want to do the free soil sample, you can be sure to get with us. And that way one of our managers can get here. We've got several of them here. Whenever I say their name, they can raise their hand, and that way you know who they are. We have Brian Albright from Salersville store. We have Bobby Ogg. He's in the fertilizer house. I'm sure many of you know him. Jeff Knable, he helps out at the main store as well as the Milldale store. We do have Tyler Wallace with the drone. We have Tom Bigger with the Ashland City store. And we also have Mr. Randy Sutherland. He's our executive advisor. He runs around. He makes sure that we're staying in shape. And then we have our CEO, Caroline Huffines. So, do y'all have any questions? And then we also have Little Bobby. He's also helping with the drone. We call him Little Bobby because his dad is Bigger Bobby that works in the fertilizer house. So you can also hear him known as B3. So, any questions? Okay, great. I'll turn it over to Mr. Gary Williams. And thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, appreciate y'all coming. So I'm Gary Williams. I work for Tennessee Farmers Co-op, or Protrition Feed. I cover 14 counties in Middle Tennessee, so I work from Kentucky to Alabama. Biggest thing here for Robertson County, I handle anything livestock related, so cattle, horses, goats, sheep, anything. We're talking about pasture today, but right now we're feeding hay, right? So if you haven't had your hay tested, you don't know how to supplement your cattle. And so if we're supplementing cattle for this winter that we're coming up, good place to start is with a hay sample. Take that hay sample and you find out whether you have good hay or bad hay and how much feed you need to feed or how much other supplement you can do. So the co-op has multiple ways to supplement your cattle. Probably the cheapest way is going to be hand feeding. If we can hand feed our cattle, that's going to be your most economical way, just about 90% of the time to do that. Next, we have protein blocks you could put in your mineral feeder. Cattle are going to consume about 1.5 pounds of these blocks a day. They're high protein blocks and got your vitamins and minerals already mixed in. Next, you could go with a tub. We carry multiple varieties of tubs at all our locations there. They're very convenient. It's a 200-pound tub. Put it out, let the cattle consume that. We've also got Prolix. Prolix is a 36% protein supplement. It's very molasses based, so you're getting the sugars and molasses, which is going to provide energy with them and protein to supplement your hay there. So I guess convenience wise, Prolix is going to be your most convenient product. It's very economical too, because you just call the co-op and they come out and fill your tank up for you. So one tank will do 50 head of cattle. Keep it full all the time. A lot of people feed it year round. It works. It's a good supplement there. But I'm going to be around for a little while. If you want your hay tested, contact me. I'll come out to your farm, test that hay for you. No problem at all. But mine's very short and brief. So we appreciate y'all coming out.
Mine will probably be shorter than Gary's. So my name's Tyler. I'm with the co-op. I'm kind of over our drone operation as well as our ground sprayer operation. I'm also a crop protection salesman, so any chemical needs you may have, I'll be glad to help you out with that. I'm just going to talk about a couple of options you got with the drone. Frost seeding is the first one. Full disclosure, we have not done any frost seeding so far. We've done a lot of cover crop, and cover crop is anywhere from 20 to 60 pounds to the acre. So we're not really sure how low of a rate we can go with our drone. I've got some different parts for it ordered that maybe we can go a little bit lower than 10 pounds if you just wanted to do 3 or 4 pounds of Ladonna clover or something. I've got the parts coming to where I think we can do that, but right now I'm not sure we can go that low. Right now we have to stay around 10 pounds. So if you wanted to do like 4 pounds of Ladonna or something, we'd probably have to mix it with a potash or pelletized lime or something, some kind of filler to get it up to about 10 or 12 pounds to the acre. Frost seeding, you want to do it mid-February. That's the ideal time. You got the thawing and the freezing of the ground. That's how that clover seed gets worked into the ground at a shallow depth. You don't want your clover seed to get too deep like you would fescue. You know, you don't want to plant it as deep as you would a grass seed. And you want to do it mid-February, so once the clover is established, you've got minimal freezes. You know, you don't want to do it too early and then the clover gets established and it has to go through several hard freezes. You want to do it mid-February when, you know, most of the hard freezes are hopefully over with. I think, you know, some of the benefits to it, you know, a clover is a legume. It produces nitrogen, which that nitrogen is going to help feed your grasses that are already there. And a grass clover mix is going to increase your forage quality and improve the digestibility for the livestock and increase protein. I think I got a little video here of the drone. This is we were seeding some cover crop last year. That's, of course, that's bare ground. I think we were putting about 40 pounds to the acre there. That was just a mix of some different things. That's really all I got on frost seeding. You know, spraying is another option we can do with the drone. When you're thinking about spraying your pastures, you want to select the right product. Maggie's going to talk about a couple different ones they have. You know, 2,4-D is not the right option. We got other options to go with. And another good thing about the drone, you know, a lot of times in the spring when you think about spraying your pasture, we get a lot of rain. You can't always get out there with a pull type sprayer or a big sprayer because the ground's wet. And with the drone, you know, if we catch a window where it's not raining, but they're calling for rain and your ground's still wet, we can get out there with the drone and go ahead and spray your pasture. You don't have to worry about rutting it up, making any tracks. And, you know, the right time to do it is critical. You don't want to let the weeds get too big, and then they're a lot harder to control. So you have to get out there as soon as you can. And you always want to make sure you use the proper adjuvant. I think John Paul might touch on that a little bit here in a little bit. Some of the benefits of spraying your pastures or hay ground, you can control the unwanted weeds, obviously. You get those unwanted weeds out of the way, that allows for the grass and the clover, or the stuff you want to be out there to grow. And if you do invest in frost seeding or you know, drilling some fescue or something in your pasture, eliminating those broadleaf weeds or unwanted weeds allows for that investment of new seed to really take off and get established, and cleaner, healthier crops for your livestock. This is a video of us spraying some tobacco. You know, a lot of people have doubts that the drone really puts it down on the ground or puts enough water. As you can see there, it really does a lot better job than people think. You know, typically we run anywhere from 2 to 5 gallons to the acre. Of course, whatever product we're spraying has a minimum gallon. If it has an aerial label, it has a minimum gallon per acre. That's really all I got.
What does it cost per acre to frost seed and spray as well?
Well, we have a minimum charge. It's usually around $350, $400, just depending on how much acres you have and the terrain. You know, if there's a lot of obstacles out there, light poles, light lines, thickets, trees, and it's going to take us a while, that minimum charge could go up a little bit. If you get up there around 25 or 30 acres, it's usually around $15 per acre for the application, plus whatever the seed or chemical would cost. Any other questions? I'll be around all day, so if there's anything I can help y'all with, just let me know.
Beautiful. How's everyone doing? Everyone warm it up a little bit. I feel like I finally thawed out. I left my house in North Alabama at about 6 a.m. this morning. I was really glad I packed the truck last night because I was like, maybe I'll do it first thing. It's going to be a little bit too cold to do it this morning. My name is Maddie Wheeler. Excited to be here with y'all this morning. I am the range and pasture specialist here in Tennessee with Corteva. I also cover North Alabama and North Mississippi. So my entire geography, working with retailers, extension, Greenpoint folks in helping folks improve their pasture and hayland space and in the weed control side of things is kind of what I focus in and day out. But one thing I wanted to touch on before we truly jump into just the weed control and a couple product options we have is how well all of our speakers today really blend together in when we look at pasture management. Because my weed control piece doesn't work if we haven't frost seeded or overseeded any grasses. The weed control piece is only a piece of it if we haven't taken care of the fertility for those grasses. On the backside, if we haven't taken care of the weeds, there's no place for that grass to come in and grow for us when we do seed over on it. And when we do put fertility out, the weeds can be the bullies on the playground that pull it right up before we let the grass take over or desirables take over on it. So I think it's a really good visual of just 4 simple boxes we need to fill in when we're looking at our pasture management planning. Obviously looking in the weed control section the most kind of here today with what I'm looking at, but to keep these in mind as you're getting ready here this spring and you're pulling your soil tests and you're looking at your seeding for the fall or what weed control you're going to do. Think about how all these are going to fit together. Allow yourself to be proactive instead of reactive on the weed control piece, and it'll save you a lot of money in the long run. Fair? Y'all, like I said, I left the house at 6 this morning. You know what time I had to wake up to leave the house at 6 this morning? I'm going to need some energy from y'all. Perfect. Well, we'll take a look at 2 products here today, Duracor and Novagraze. But keep in mind, we've got more products in the product line. I think about all of my products or sort of weed control application types, weed control tools as tools in a tool belt. So I need to pull the right tool in the right situation to go after what I need. Biggest piece of that when you're making that product selection is weed ID. Know what you have, know your desirables, know your grasses, know what weeds you're going after, and know what your goals are for those acres. So keep that in mind as we look at these 2 products. These are going to be broadleaf products primarily, so if you're looking for more woody stem control, brush, briar, things like that, we might look to something like Remedy or Pasture Guard. Again, different tools for different jobs. But my primary used product in the state of Tennessee has become Duracor. Anyone familiar with Duracor? Couple nods ahead. Anyone familiar with Graze On Next? Good heritage product we've carried over for a long time. If you think about Graze On Next as a really good residual product that we've had for a long time, think about Duracor as kind of the graduated next step of a residual product. Has that same great aminopyrrolid residual. Why do we love a residual? It gives us extended control beyond just the day we spray. We're all busy doing other stuff. Let's let that product work harder for us than just what's emerged on day 1. The other reason we love Duracor is because it's paired with an active ingredient called Rinskor. What Rinskor does is take the 2,4-D out of Graze On Next, making a safer product that fits our weed scenarios a lot better in the state and adds about 40 more weeds for control. Fair? Well, if we look at use rates, that's a big thing we look at, how much product we have to handle. Lower use rates on Duracor compared to Graze On Next. Most of my use rates ends up being in that 16 to 20 fluid ounces per acre. That's going to be a little bit dependent on application type, size of the weeds I'm going after, and what weeds I'm going after. If we look at preferred surfactants, I know we'll talk some more about adjuvants here. Runs really well with an NIS or an MSO. One thing I wanted to call out down here is it does have an aerial label. So we have had a lot of Duracor go out by drone here in Tennessee. We've seen a lot of good success with it. I just got back from a conference where we were talking with extension experts and professors at Auburn on a lot of the drone work they're doing. So it's something we continue to look at in the pasture space and have seen a lot of success with. Duracor being one of those that I think has gone out majority of those acres for me so far in the last couple years. Couple call outs on weeds that it controls. If you think about Graze On Next typically has about 100 weeds that we're looking at on the label. We're looking at 140 weeds on the Duracor label. What does that give us? That gives us control on something like buckhorn plantain, which is one of my top calls I get in the state of Tennessee. We missed it a lot of times with Graze On Next, 2,4-D sure ain't touching it. Duracor with that Rinskor component will absolutely smoke buckhorn plantain. If you've got a hay situation, you might have cut in, say, first cutting of the year, thought you had good hay out there, and then you look back and it was a carpet of plantain. I get that call a lot. This is the product we're typically pulling on to go after that plantain situation. Horse nettle's another one in the summer that we're having a lot more issues with. This is a really strong option on horse nettle. Again, a good residual. The other place I pull on this in the summertime is going to be for our pigweed species. I always will prefer to pull a residual product if I can on pigweed or spiny amaranth, because we know it can be one of those weeds that gives us multiple flushes in a year. I want to have residual down for the summer so that I can catch some of those that are coming through. But you can see some of our big call outs here, really strong on our thistle species, buttercups, a lot of those sort of things. But Duracor has been a really good option for us going out. Mentioned a couple of these, but one piece about that we don't always think about with 2,4-D being taken out of the tank is the safety on volatility and odor. So when we look at something like 2,4-D that can pick up and move, if we have a product that has no 2,4-D in it, it's practically non-volatile. Really safe on the ground, especially if we're going after those pigweeds, those horse nettles, like I mentioned, stuff that gets late summer heat. We don't want to put a product out there that's going to pick up and move for us if we've got sensitive stuff in the area. Really safe on the ground. Really safe on our grasses, as well as has no grazing restrictions for any classes of livestock. So if you've got donkeys, horses, cows, whatever, you're good to put this out with them in the field. You're safe and ready to rock and roll. Low odor. Has anyone sprayed 2,4-D, gone home at the end of the day, and you're like, I just got to change. I feel like I just smell like 2,4-D for forever. Definitely a piece that we talk about, being able to use this out of the spray rig takes away some of that odor. If you also are in proximity to maybe folks that aren't aware of spraying or what pasture and hayland management is, they have started to recognize the smell of something like 2,4-D, right? And they might call the phone and say, hey, what are you spraying? Lower odor typically helps in preventing some of those calls, unless they see the spray rig, then they're usually calling you anyway, right? But Duracor has been a really good tool for me. Primary residual herbicide that I have going out in the state. Non-restricted, don't need to worry about maintaining your license. Been a really good product. Any questions on Duracor before I jump over to Novagraze? Exactly. So it's going to be a little bit dependent on what weed it is. But for the most case, if a weed is in that desirable 3 to 6 inch range, we're getting it young and immature, we can run a lower use rate like 16 fluid ounces per acre. If we get something like pigweed that we need really good residual down, or we get something that's starting to grow up on us, that's where I'm going to bump up to 18 to 20 fluid ounces, just so I have more residual down on the ground and I have more active ingredient going after that larger weed. But our entire goal is to be proactive, so we're using to save a little money in the tank and be able to run that 16 fluid ounces if we can. Yes, sir. Any other questions? Okay, wonderful. Well, we just heard a great little piece on why clover is beneficial. This is not clover safe. So how do you make that decision based on your pasture weed situation, what your goal is, and what you're spraying? Because historically, we haven't been able to manage clovers in our pasture and hayland while also keeping them safe, providing good weed control. Until about a year ago, we brought out Novagraze. Anyone heard, familiar, tried it this last year? Seen a couple head nods. Okay. So what Novagraze is a white clover safe herbicide. So we take the benefits of good weed control that we know, we already had kind of an overview. Weeds are robbing our space, robbing our fertility. We're able to remove those while also maintaining the benefits of having white clover mixed into our grasses. That's our goal here with Novagraze. I know some folks have done that with 2,4-DB. We see reaction on the clover as it comes back. It's not always consistent that it comes back, and a lot of times that 2,4-D is not handling the weeds we're putting it on anyway. We're just putting it out to make ourselves feel better. I do the same thing sometimes. Hey, 2,4-D is great if you want to see your money work later that day, but it doesn't always capture all the weeds we have. So we look at something like Novagraze to be able to maintain those desirable forages, take care of those weeds, also maintain our white clovers. What does that mean? It's a non-residual. So I just told you about a residual herbicide in Duracor. A non-residual has got its benefits, but we also will lose things, right? We're controlling what's there the day we spray, not what's coming up in 2 or 3 weeks as things continue to emerge. So just set our expectations on that. but that fits in a lot of situations. It might be our only option because we've just spent money to put white clovers in, and we want to maintain those in our pasture and hayland space, right? We don't want to kill those out. B, maybe you have an area that you want to continue to be a non-residual acre. You don't want to put a residual herbicide down for whatever reason. Maybe you rotate it into row crop in coming years. Maybe you cut hay off of it, and even though we have supplemental labeling in Tennessee, you want to keep non-residual hay. Maybe you need to come back and seed grasses in pretty quickly, so you need some shorter plant back dates. There's acres out there that haven't seen a touch of white clover, but this has been a really good fit for them because it's a really good non-residual. It has 2,4-D in it, and it also has that Rinskor that we talked about in Duracor. So what does that mean for us in what we're going out to control? If we're running 24 fluid ounces of Novagraze, I'm controlling buckhorn plantain with a non-residual, not something we've been able to do previously. I'm controlling small iron weeds and things like that. I also have safety up to 48 fluid ounces per acre in a year. So if I need to make 2 applications at 24, I can, or maybe I've got weeds that have grown up and I need to run it at 32 because my thistle just taken off on me. I've got some flexibility in there. Big piece on Novagraze. We talk about recommended adjuvants. We love running an adjuvant with a herbicide. There is a MSO requirement to be ran in the tank with Novagraze. So keep in mind, if you are picking up a jug of Novagraze, you should be walking out with an MSO in hand as well. 1%, that's whatever your preferred MSO is. There's a couple different options out there, but keep that in mind. It's going to be a label requirement. It's not that an NIS doesn't work. You will see reaction, but in terms of kill of what's on the label, run it with MSO. Thumbs up for that.
What about horse metal?
That's a great question, so I'll jump on to my next one here. Not going to be my go-to option for horse nettle. So let me explain to you maybe the time frames I would pull this product out. Fall. Buttercups come up. I've got my thistles starting to emerge. I've got my plantain up. That'd be a great time to pull on this product if I want to stay non-residual. If I'm into the spring, same weeds out there, things like that coming up. The clovers are there, great option. Early summer, so small ironweed, small pigweed, some of that kind of stuff, going to be a really strong option. Some of what I call the late summer junk, those big uglies that we get late in the summer, later flushes of pigweed, horse nettle, some of that kind of stuff, this is not going to be as strong on it. It's not going to have enough active ingredient to go in after some of those late summer perennials. So of this list on here, what I would say I have most folks calling me and using this product on is obviously going to be our buttercups, our ironweed. We saw a lot of great reaction on our thistles this year. I had even some big ones that came down. Poison hemlock and plantain being 2 other ones that having a non-residual option has been really strong for in the area. All right. Anyone in here managing white clovers or want to start managing white clovers? Okay, seeing some head nods. I'm all about setting expectations, whether that's use rates, what needs to go in the tank, what you should be able to see after a product, and that's why I throw these next few slides in here. If you're familiar with Novagraze or the predecessor tech name that we talked about it for a few years is Proclova, you've probably seen these pictures. What this is showing you the reaction that the white clover goes through after application. To kind of set the scene, this is in a pure stand of white clover. Most likely your pasture is not a pure stand of white clover. Shouldn't really be a pure stand of white clover if it is. So keep in mind, if you've got good grasses mixed in here, it's been lightly grazed by whatever livestock's on it prior to application. This is going to shorten this reaction time. But what we see here is on week 1 after application, we start to see some yellowing and some lodging. Week 2, it really starts to sit back a little bit for us. Jump into week 3, week 4, week 5, it's back up, it's bloomed, it's happy. But I usually tell people, if Maddie just stood in front of me and told me about a product that's not going to hurt my white clover, and then I walk out at week 3 or week 2, I'd call me and say you're a liar. If you do see this reaction out of your clover, give it some time. It's just going to metabolize that product, bump back up, and you won't see a difference from what's been treated and not treated. Fair? But just want to make sure your expectations are set on that so you don't walk out there week 2 and go, Maddie's a liar. You give it a moment there. Any questions on this? Wonderful. All right, just my last couple call outs, whether it's Duracor, Graze on Next, Remedy, whatever products you're pulling on, timing is going to be key. I will show a QR code here in a minute. I also have a few physical books with me for weed ID guide, identification. Knowing what we have when we need to control it is going to be a big piece. The other piece here is if you are spraying. Now, luckily, if you use a drone spray situation or have someone come out and spray, they're going to have everything calibrated for you ahead of time. If you are doing your own spraying, please, 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 if you take one thing away, calibrate your sprayers. We need to know what exactly is going out there, because I'll give you something in a per acre application rate, right? The follow-up question I always get was just tell me how many jugs I need to pull in my sprayer. What do I need to put in? And my follow-up question is how much water are you putting out per acre? And then sometimes we got to do that math to get there. So get things calibrated. And then, like I mentioned, I think John Paul might talk a little bit more about some adjuvants and surfactants. Really beneficial in the tank. I'll leave you with one analogy. A lot of folks will call me and say, well, if you tell me I should run a surfactant with it, shouldn't the herbicide work on its own? I was like, well, I mean, yes. And then I thought one day, I was like, how's the best way I can explain this? Anyone have a really good local Mexican joint they like to go eat at? Maybe a Thursday night, Friday night. I know my husband and I just moved to a new place and we're trying to find a good one near us. They come and they set those chips in front of you and they are so good. You cannot buy them out of the bag that way. Think about that herbicide as those chips. Really good on its own. It's nice and tasty. It gets the job done. How much better are those chips when you have just a little bit of salsa with it? You add just a little bit of heat to the tank, let it break through the leaf, let it get in there, have that herbicide fully go to work for you. That's what that adjuvant or surfactant's doing for you, is letting that herbicide really get to work in there and aiding in it. Fair? Y'all, there's like 3 other people talking after me. Fair? All right, I've been known to make some folks do some jumping jacks. All right, if you want to scan this, go for it. If not, like I said, I'll have this later. I've got some physical ones. I'll hang out for the rest of the day. Please feel free to use that. Definitely a helpful tool. Or if you want to come grab a business card from me, I'm happy to assist in any way I can. Any questions on those 2 products, pasture management, weed control? All right. Well, wonderful. Appreciate y'all having me.
I'm not very tech savvy, so y'all just bear with me.
While John Paul's getting set up, Carly, you might come do this later, but you see the little sheet laying on your chairs there. That's just a few activities we got coming up this year, other things that you might be interested in at some of the different locations. Also, around the room, there's a scan code. If you're interested in getting our Text Tuesday, is that right? Texting Tuesday special. We have a special every week, so you can scan that to get our text. How to do, Grandpa?
Wonderful.
Take up enough time.
Yeah. All right. So, talking about range and pasture. So, what are we trying to get out of our pastures? We're trying to raise some good cattle, right? And put more pounds on those cattle in a quicker amount of time. And so we want to take what we've got and use the most of it, and that's our grasses. But to get there, we got to do kind of, clean those pastures up, have them clean, and it's building blocks like Maddie said. By show of hands, how many of y'all soil sampled in the last 3 years? Okay, so we recommend soil sampling every 3 years because we got to know what the soil needs. It's not a cookie cutter plan for fertility, and every field's different. We got different soils in those things. So this is kind of just the basic of fertility, and I got another slide, it's a little more in depth, but we can go through here and just talk about a few things. So, we start out with our soil pH. So the pH is how our chemicals are going to react and also how our fertilizer is going to react. Because we have, sometimes it depends on the pH, we got those fertilizers, different nitrogens, phosphorus, potassium, and sulfur, but it may be tied up in the soil because our pH is not there. And if you'll see here, this is our pH range, and you can see the availability depending on the pH. And our target is 6.5. And like I said, we recommend you soil testing every 3 years, and co-op can do that for you. Get with Tom or Mr. Bobby or any of the crew, Tyler, and they'll get you set up and they'll come do a soil sample. That way you got an idea of your base range and where you're at. And because we don't want to put more fertilizer out there than we have to. Fertilizer's high. So you want to make sure you're putting out there what your soil needs for it to get the most benefit of it. Like I said, the pH 7, that's our neutral soil. And you see every time you step down, a 6, that's 10 times more acidic. Same thing, 500 times. So it's key to know where your pH is, because that's the building block that you start with, is having the right soil pH. So as we look at nitrogen, and so as we see, here's a 4.5. And so if you don't know where your soils are at on your pH, but look at how much so if you go out there and put out 100 pounds of nitrogen, you're going to get 30% of it. You just throw 70% of that away if you got your pH at that range. And you see through here. And once you get up here to 6, see, you're getting a good bang for your investment. So that's where it's key to start knowing where your pH is. And so I recommend that you get with Robertson Cheatham's agronomy crew and set up and go do some soil sampling, and then get started on it. You don't want to do all of it. Get in a routine where you do like a 30-year acreage or something like that. That way, every 3 years, you're not having to go and do, like if it needs pH, you're not doing it every year. You kind of spread that out over 3 years. Good. And then get a book and keep up with it. That way you can see what your soils are doing. Then when you come back and do that next soil sample 3 years, you can see how it's changed. But as you see here, if you got a low pH here, you're losing half of it at a 5. And that's, how many of y'all want to throw money out the window? That's not what we're in here for. We're here to be sustainable agriculture. And we know we got a lot of people coming in that don't understand what we've done for years. And so we want to be good stewards of the land we got, and we do, because that's how we make our living. And that's how we provide for our family. So this right here is a kind of a key takeaway. But see, this is nitrogen, and here's our phosphates. Is phosphates high right now? They're really high. So when you're looking at let's just say, I'm going to throw a number out because I don't know what the prices are. Let's just say it's $900 a ton. And you put out a ton over your farm, you just lost $450. If you're up in here in this range, you've lost that much money by not having your pH at the right thing. And it takes a while to get your pH up. So that's one thing about checking it every 3 years. It takes a little while for that pH to get up after you lime. So it's one of those things. It's not, if you go lime, it's not automatically going to bring your pH up. It's got to get it in there working that soils. If you see here, this is it's kind of mind-boggling to me when you see how much you can lose by these pH levels. And here's our potash. You see here again, we want to get down to this, around this 5.5 to 6, where we really benefiting from our fertilizer. And here, we've done gotten through this fall. This is where we're storing up our nutrients. So if you do a fall fertility program, spring growth, usually we get a good stance and we get it going. But in the spring, we want to delay our feeding a little bit to get that growth. And another thing we want to work out is when we're grazing those cattle, is not let them overgraze. You want to keep that height to it. And so, how many of y'all do rotational grazing? So rotational grazing, that keeps that plant healthier, because you're not getting down and getting in that get down there low so it can grow. And then also when you're clipping your pastures, don't clip them too high, especially like on a fescue. Don't clip them too low. So we'll go on through here. But anyways, when you're mowing your pastures, in the fall, you can go a little bit lower in August. And then we recommend your nitrogen and sulfur. So you got to look at that too. So 92% of Tennessee farm, the soil test that Tennessee farmers put out, 92% of the farms were low in sulfur. So how many of y'all put sulfur out when you're putting your fertilizer? It's one of the things we don't look at. Like a triple 19. What's most people use? Like triple 19. We do that because that's what we've always done. And I mean, and it's good that we are fertilized, but we need to have that soil test so we really know where we're at and our levels of nitrogen and sulfur ratio. And right here it says a good target is 12-1, and we don't know that unless we take that soil sample. And Mr. Bobby and these guys, they got some soil samples, and if you get them to do it, they can go through that soil sample and show you what you got there. How many of y'all had so this is kind of a thing when you go out there and look at your pastures and see where you're at. If you're less than 30% here, you need to kill it and replant it. And you still got time this spring to put something on there. And then if you're less than 60%, you still want to put it, but you want to keep what you got. But we recommend you drilling in some stuff and then into that mold down so you can get that soil contact, because you gotta have some soil contact to get in there. And then if you're over 6%, add some clovers in there. But then also on the clovers, when you got clover, you don't want to put too much nitrogen at the beginning because that's going to hurt that clover if you put too much nitrogen on it at the beginning. And then you look at overseeding and spot seeding some of those spots that are bare. That way you get that back going. Like I said earlier, your grazing height. You see right here where they put this hay ring around here. See the growth there, and then out here how thin it is. So you got to watch that. Make sure you don't overgraze, and watch that cutting height. Then here's some kind of basic things on cool season grasses. So 1 ton of hay will remove a 37-12-54. So that's just putting back what it's taken out. You're not building those soils, but this would be kind of a guesstimation when you try to put back what you got. You know how many tons you got off, if you're cutting for hay last year, how much you took off. So this is kind of a little guide here. So a 4x4 bale that weighs 450 pounds will remove 8-3-12. That's 18 pounds of urea, 6 pounds of DAP, and 20 pounds of potash. And here's a 5x5 that weighs 800 pounds. Shows what it'll remove, a 15-5-22. So that's replacing what has came off of there. So that's kind of a little example there of what could be removed from what you're cutting. How many of y'all just run cattle, and how many do hay too, or do you buy your hay? How many buys their hay? Just one. So most time you're using your land to feed that cattle, and we want to get the most out of that land that you got. So this is kind of a recommendation, but still that soil sample is like the prescription. When you go to the doctor and you take your blood, do your blood work, and you really know what you need. If you're missing some kind of nutrient, that's how you can really get a good idea besides just looking at it. I'll pull one more up here and show you this a little more in depth. Any questions so far? Quiet. How many of y'all, does any of y'all grow alfalfa? Anybody growing alfalfa? All right, we'll get by that. Bermuda? All right, so cool season pastures. So this is showing some soil levels. So when you get your soil test, it'll say if you're low, medium, or high in these different categories here. So in nitrogen, you can see if you got your soil test levels where you've been looking at your soil test and been fertilizing, you may be low or you may be high, so you wouldn't need anything in a grass clover pasture here. So you wouldn't need any. They wouldn't recommend anything. But if you're medium, you see it's asking for if it's new 60 pound and just maintenance, it's 30 pounds. So we don't. If you take that soil sample and you put it out there, you may be putting stuff out there that you don't really need at that time. And here's your potash here levels. You know, fertilizer is high, so you don't want to put something out there that you don't need, but you do. If you need it, you need to put it out there because it's going to help you make more pounds per acre. And then your cattle are going to gain faster. But here's you know, tall fescue, Timothy and orchard grass. You can see all this. If y'all want to take a picture, give you kind of an idea on that. Like I said, you know, there's two recommendations. You know, one is for when you're putting it in or maintenance. And here, like I said, nitrogen should be omitted on pastures containing more than 30% clover in the spring. If clover is less, apply 30 pounds of nitrogen per acre. And then, you know, in the fall, we won't stockpile that fescue and put your more nitrogen there towards the end in August, September in there. And then we recommend your phosphates and your potash, put it in one application. And then on the lime piece, we talked about lime, getting that up. You don't want to put no more than 4 tons because it can't take all that in. So, you know, I don't think your soils would call for that much, but if they did, you don't want to put all that out at one time. Then you want to come back and soil test in 3 years to see where that's at, you know, or 2 years, and retest, see if that pH has come up. Then if you need to put additional on there. Like I said, we can go more in depth to that. And I recommend when you get those soil tests back, talk to your people at the co-op and let them go over it with you. And so you get a good plan going forward. And a lot of it depends on what you're wanting out of it also. And that's all I got. Any questions? Talking about the surfactants, we recommend like if you're doing a basic spray, we always recommend NIS, a non-ionic surfactant. With the Novagraze, we got Strike Lock and Destiny, which is our 2 premium. And what that does is it helps get that leaf cuticle. Some of that helps break that down so it can get in there. And we also recommend a interlock to keep down drift, but that you don't get over on your neighbor. And we got a lot of people moving into our area that's not used to spraying, and so we want to keep it off them because we want to put it where it goes. We don't want to spend money over in a fence row or on somebody else's. We want to put it where we want it to go. So we recommend interlock on all of them because how many of y'all use a boomer sprayer? So y'all know that thing covers a long ways, but we want that product to get down where it goes, and that's on that grass. And so interlock will help push that down, and it makes a better. The size of the spray is more uniform. It helps push that down on the ground. And like I said, Destiny with the Novagraze, we recommend that. And thank y'all for your time. Any questions? I'm not the expert, but I know people that know more than me, so we can get them in contact with you. Appreciate your time. Interlock.
I'll use mine. And that, in fact, I have that, so it,
We'll have to plug into USB.
that's fine. It'll work.
See if we can.
The battery's out on mine.
Oh, okay.
I've got another one. There's another outlet.
Is there is on the other side?
So here we go.
While he's setting that up, I'll kind of give you guys a little intel about the texting Tuesdays. We only send out one text a week, and it only goes out on Tuesday. You get it about 10 a.m. in the morning. So the sale for this week is Rotella oil. It's 1 gallon, and we have it on sale for $18.99. Traditionally, that's $25.99 in the stores. You come in, you show us your phone where you got that text message, and that's how we know that it's actually for you. But that is exclusive only to people that are texting with us. So those are the type of deals that you're getting. They are not promoted in any other way, and you do have to show your phone, so it's not something like someone can send a screenshot to 50 other people and they're getting it. And we try to make that a pretty good deal where it's one of those where it's like, okay, I actually want to go in and get that from us. And if you guys have any ideas of things you'd like to go on sale, let us know. And also, we're trying to do more of these this year, so if there's something particular that you would like to learn about, please let us know that too. And you're in a certain location, you're like, hey, I don't want to drive to the Springfield store, can you do more of this down here? We'd be happy to do that. We just have to know that there is a need to do that. So.
All right, question, Carl.
Great, Randy.
Is the text deal just good on Tuesday, or is it?
It's good for the week.
Okay.
It's good for the week. You do not have to come in that Tuesday. You will get the deal on Tuesday, and it is good until the following Tuesday. And it does tell you that in the text. Good?
I believe so.
Go for it.
I don't know if it's recording, but that's very good. Well, good morning. I'm Larry Stauber. You probably, one person knows me in this whole room. But I'm the tech development manager for Verdesian for the East. So I have Texas all the way to the East Coast, Maine to Florida, and all crops in between. And so my background is agronomist, but if you want to talk apples or grapes, we can do that, or strawberries, we can do that. If you want to talk rice, cotton, tobacco, let's go for it. We can do that too. So what we're talking about today, or my subject matter, and it's kind of interesting that a lot of the talks we had earlier, I have some of that same content. So if you see it more than once, it's probably going to be on the test. So pay attention. So you'll hear that. All right. First of all, let's talk about dedicated land management. We talked about that very briefly. So what is your goal? Do you have certain acres set aside that's going to be for hay only, and you manage those differently from a nutritional standpoint? So all this is all on nutritional. But, from that, and as brought earlier, I'm glad you put those numbers in there because you are removing a lot of fertilizer. But the same token, that's feeding the cows. So that's you want that, but at the same time, don't forget that. So every time you remove a ton, you're removing a lot of fertilizer. And the ground at some point is not going to replace that. So you've got to replace it. And when it comes into I'm putting manures out. I've got chicken litter. I've got all the free chicken litter I can put on. That's not going to cover it by any stretch. That's great. That's wonderful. But that's not going to get it. You've got to supplement, especially when you're pulling off 6 and maybe 8 tons, depending on what kind of setup that you have. It's probably not that high here. In some places, unless you've got irrigation and you're really pushing it hard. But that's doable. But even with a lot of that, you've got to replace that with commercial fertilizers. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Another option is if you have any dairy or you have areas where you concentrated animals and you've got a lot of manures and maybe in a lot of these situations or some of the operations I'm familiar with, not only do they have just the dairy part of it where they're emptying out the lagoons on the fields coming out of the milk parlors, but you also have broiler houses, turkey houses. There's a lot of material going on in those fields. That's great. That's wonderful. But you also concentrate a lot of nutrient. And so that's an extreme side. So you have more than you need, and you have over here where you're mining the full out of that ground. And so there's 2 totally different things you've got to manage differently. Well, let's talk about everything else. So if we have a setting where we have a pasture, and that's what it is, it's just for grazing. We've controlled the weeds. We've gone in and we're overseeding with Lesbides and clovers, and we've got our Bermudas, our fescues, our orchard grass. We've got all that. We're putting manures on. Great program. Is that good enough? Not really. So if you want to maximize the head count on the farm, you want to maximize how much gains you get, because that's your goal. We want to get the weight on the cows. We want to move these cows through cow-calf operation, whatever your setup is. Even with all that, is that good enough? And so, no, we need to supplement. We need to make sure we got that nutrition there. Very early on, it's mentioned about sampling hay. Please get that hay sample. It's real easy. It's real simple. It's not that much. Find out where you stand, because you're going to find out I'm running a lot of roughage through, but I'm not getting a whole lot of nutritional value. The energy, you got to supplement the energy. It's cold outside. Cooler weather, they need a lot of energy to stay warm. Flip it over to the summer, they need a lot of energy to cool down. So you, in both extremes, you got to make sure you've got those the protein and energy and the roughage level set. But to do all this, it's nutrition on that farm. It's on, you know, how much fertilizer do I need to put on that field to make sure I'm maximizing for my cows, and at the same time not mining these fields, so that, because it takes it's expensive to recover. I've got a little hay place over toward Little Rock, and oh my gosh, it'll break the bank trying to get this ground back, because it's never been tended to. When you get all the weeds off of it and you get the lime on it, and talk about 4 tons per acre, I hope that gets the pH from a 4 to a 6. So it's very difficult to get that up there. And then at the same time, it says, now let's talk about putting fertilizer on and all the micronutrients. So today we'll talk about the nitrogen, how to be more efficient with your nitrogen on your commercial fertilizers, your phosphorus, and then on your micronutrients. We're going to talk about that real quick. One thing that's kind of intriguing to me is how animals behave and how they act. They're telling you a story because they can't really communicate with you. So I have a basset hound, and it's always, what are you doing now? It's always trying to figure out what's this dog's, why are you doing that? Or that's odd. But with the animals, it's kind of interesting. If you watch your cattle, you may see them, or you would think that here's a free graze, it's open, you can expect them kind of be sprinkled all across the field. But why do they gather up in one area? They always seem to go to this one spot. They're always on that hillside. They're always over here in this bottom. Why is that? I mean, it's not just the springtime. You think, well, there's a grass species over there, another, maybe it's clover or lesbides over there. They're just getting into, and they like that. But it's all the time. They migrate to that one area, and the nutrition, they know what's good. It actually tastes better to them. It's easier palate, they can, when they graze on it, it's easier to work. Or nutrition-wise, they already know what they need. And so you're trying to figure that out. And so that may be one thing. The other part is these lovely horses and donkeys. They will eat a damn fence up or other wood. And the reason they're doing that, and there's multiple reasons, but some of that is they're looking for a nutrient. There's a mineral they need. And so they're doing this behavior. Now, there's some other reasons, but that could be one of them. But if you have a wooden barn, the cows will eat the side off of it. I've seen them do that. And you put a mineral block out there, so what fixes that? It's that mineral. They're looking for that mineral. So always keep those mineral blocks out there. And then that gets into another topic is, okay, I put this on. They're not chewing up the fences anymore, or trying to get out to go to the neighbors because it looks better over there or it tastes better over there. But they hang out there. They always hang out by those salt blocks. And you thought, well, that's good that they're doing that, but they're hanging out at the salt. I'm going through these things left and right. Again, maybe the feed that you're providing is not fully, everything's not in it that they need. So be sure to kind of watch how they're behaving, and then you respond to, well, maybe I need to fertilize my fields, or I need to sample this, I need to look at that, or this or that. So all that stuff is important. Kind of check out all the avenues. Now, back in the late 1800s, von Liebig had come up with a law, or actually a really good concept is tried and proven, that if you have all the nutrients in your on your soil sample or your tissue sample, and you're short one, that one is going to pull down the whole thing. And on the other thing, as I mentioned earlier about the pH, you think it's just the pH. It's so what? It's a 5. That's going to pretty much, it causes a shock for everything. Or if you have a pH of 8, 9, a real alkaline, that's going to pretty much prevent all the good that you're trying to do. So if you have all this wonderful ideas and concepts of, I'm going to fertilize this field, we're going to put this thing in production, we're going to really do this right. But if the pH is off, either too acidic or too alkaline, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's like I said, wasted effort and money on that. So you always want to make sure you know where you stand, and so you can make some corrective measures on that. And a lot of times we just need to put fertilizer on to kind of supplement all the other things that we're doing. So here's a report. This is a Waypoint report. This was off one of my research plots. And you look at it, you go, okay, we got bars, so we're doing good there. There's some green bars, that's great. Says calcium's good, we're decent on the zinc, manganese, that's pretty awesome. And you go through here and it says the pH is 6.5. Sounds like that's where we need to be. We're good. We'll just roll with it. However, the boron is low, sulfur is low, copper is low. That's going to pull back the whole thing. It makes that big a deal. So if you had a cattle grazing on that, they're going to kind of need that as their body, as they increase in weight, they're going to look for that. Hence is where they're going to be chewing on the fences. They're going to be wearing out the mineral blocks. So you need to really kind of be aware of what kind of corrective measures can we take to kind of fix some of this. So, but that's, and also at the same point is when you do your soil samples, you'll have a recommendation on there. So based off of what grass species you have, or if you're running any kind of broadleaves, if you have alfalfa or other clovers, and you'll have that recommendation, follow that recommendation. This has been researched for 30 plus years. These are realistic numbers. So in this particular field, this is just a corn recommendation. The phosphorus was 94 units. That's a lot of phosphorus, but it crashed on us. And you go over here, the potassium, 113 pounds of potassium to go on the field. That's a lot of fertilizer. That's just to get it brought up to our yield goals. So this thing was, you say this is a great silt loam. It's just fertilizer. We got to address that, plus the micronutrients. And so all the way across here, it said we need copper, we need boron, we need sulfur. So all that stuff is certainly be considered. Now your sulfur sources, ammonium sulfate, you guys carry the ammonium sulfate, that should be in your blend. That's automatic. Just stick that in, or 20 pounds of, or 100 pounds of ammonium sulfate automatically. You know, we don't get all the environmental sulfur that we used to. So we have to add it because it's coming off these fields. Yeah, go ahead.
Like ammonium sulfate, how that reacts faster than urea, and how the time it takes for urea to start working.
Well, urea in a let's say at a grass environment, especially when you're running 5-6 inch tall and it's wet, that's how fast can we go with this, because urea it does react. It's got to go through some chemical changes, but it's pretty quick. And if it's wet, if you say I'm going to sling it, I got my calendar or my schedule today says I got to get this urea slung, but if there's a heavy dew out there, you're wasting your time. You're just by that afternoon it's already volatilized off. You've lost half of it. So you got to. It's kind of tricky. I like the ammonium sulfate because it actually stays with you a little longer. The urea, well, we have a go around on that, so we can make that stuff last a little longer. But yeah, that it's depending on what source you have, it gets kind of tricky as to when you can use it and how long it's going to stay with you. Because that's what you want is I need to feed the hay field, the pastures and so forth. But at the same time, I don't want to waste my money, so we can kind of work around that. But yeah, that's a good point. That they do react differently, and how you use them is a little different too. That's the yield goal for corn. That's a well, that was a previous crop.
Oh, okay.
Previous crop. See, even the soybeans didn't give us a whole lot. They always, so you go in the I states, they always say, oh, you had soybeans on there, we could pull back the nitrogen for the corn. Not here, because we're going to burn through this. So this is 2.7% organic matter. That's pretty stout. That's kind of unusual, but we'll burn through that. So soybeans, yeah, that was great. They put that on there. But it didn't give us anything considering we had to put pretty much the full load of nitrogen on there.
Are you saying Eureka's not good to go top of ground?
No, that's fine to use it. It's just don't use it when it's wet. When heavy duty, make sure the ground's dry, and then put it on at that point. No, use urea. It's just pick your time when you're doing it. If you need to reschedule yourself so that make sure it's all dry, because if it's wet, it will immediately dissolve. It loves water, and it will immediately dissolve and start volatilizing off. So I want you to take full advantage of your investment on these fertilizers that you're using, and use it that way. No, use urea. I like it because it's the cheapest form out there. I want it to be on the ground, then get rained in. So that's yet another tricky part is if I put the urea out on dry ground, dry grass, perfect, but I want to rain and wash it in. That little bit of dew is more trouble than it's worth.
I got bad advice. The last time I got fertilizer, I won't say where, but they recommended after a rain.
I like to see it. Well, here's the other part though. If it's very, very dry, laid on top of the ground, it's not going to do you good either. So it's tricky. It's to say, do we have any kind of soil moisture to work with, so the roots can actually take it in? So that's one thing. But the other is if it's treated, and we'll talk about that, then it really won't matter. So if it's treated urea, that won't matter. If it's treated, that's a totally different conversation. Yeah. No, that was fine. That's fine. But with a lot of these fertilizers that you're going to put on, we got to have soil moisture. I mean, if it's dry, the plant's not going to take it in. The plant's basically in survival mode, and so it's not going to take anything like that. So, but if you need your grasses to be actively growing, yeah, fertilizer is a big advantage for you. So it just depends on what was the situation at the time.
The biggest problem is we don't know when it's going to rain again.
Right. So when it quits, it quits. Yeah, that was like last year. Please stop raining, and then we get into June and July, and it's like, well, I sure wish I could get a rain. So it's just, we knew that was going to happen. So let's talk about the nitrogen. I'm glad you brought it up. So one of the products that everyone has in the room here has access to is a product that we have. It is called NuCharge. I don't think you have any NutriSphere, but we'll kind of use those interchangeably. But you have NuCharge. And NuCharge G, meaning that this is what we would put on urea. I'd highly recommend you treat your urea. And what this particular product is going to do is kind of help you in that you don't waste your expense. We're going to extend how long that lasts for you. So in general, as mentioned earlier, you put on your fertilizer. The plants don't need it very early, but as it gets later on, that's when it really needs it. But that also is very difficult to do is your timing, because again, if it's dry, I put it out there on ground, it's not going to do anything. So it gets kind of tough on that. But the biggest part is if we can get these fertilizers out there and make it available or somehow allow it to be available later on in the season. So this particular product is a resin. And so you would automatically think, and we say resins, polymers are some of our terminologies that we use. And so with that, you think, okay, so you're going to coat this stuff. And it's got this little prill, and eventually it's going to fall apart. The way our particular chemistry works is that it'll have a dye, so you can see that it's treated. You'll have a solvent, and you'll have the polymer. What this particular product does is, yes, it coats it, but it does not create a hard shell. It looks just like a blue or green or purple, what dye that we have with it, urea. With that, it's going to infiltrate the whole prill. And so what you'll end up having is protected from the inside out. You do not have a hard shell. So as that prill dissolves into the ground, then you've got the full active on this particular item. So here's an example of what that particular product would look like. The chemistry part of this is we want to keep this in the ammonia form as long as we can. And so I really like this ammonium sulfate because it's already in the ammonia form, and we're going to hold it. So we're going to buy some time. And if it does rain, if it doesn't rain, if we got a heavy dew, if we don't have a dew. And so you kind of take out all the guesswork, make it a little bit more simpler. So with urea, we really like it on the urea part is that we're protecting it and keeping it away from chemical reactions and enzymatic reactions. So it lasts longer in the field, because you don't want it just a big burst of nitrogen. And a lot of times you'll see that. I'm going to put urea out on my field. I give it probably about 4 or 5 days, and then you see that nice green of it. You go, it's working, yay. And then about 3 weeks later, it's all back yellow again. So it just, you got that real flash, and then it kind of quit. What this particular product is going to allow you to extend that, so you get your green up, and it'll hold that green up and take full advantage of what you're trying to achieve with that. The other part is weather is very difficult to predict. Haven't figured that out yet. And so if you think, I want to try this. I want to try this on some pastures. So you say, but the timing's not good. But I still want to do this. So you can always pre-treat your urea and hold it for 4 to 6 months or so. And I don't know if you guys do that or not, but you don't have to like treat and then hurry and get to the field with it. We got some other products. That's kind of the way they work. But this one is, you can treat, and if the weather's not right, you can come back and get it later and spread it later. So no, this is any grass, anything that's going to use nitrogen, you'll extend as that becomes available. And what it is, it's preventing, this polymer is preventing that from being available. So we have the ammonia or the fertilizer that we're using. This long chain of the new charge is going to hold it. So gradually it'll break apart as you get like water on it or bacterial activity, and then even root activity. All of that will gradually break it apart. So over time, it's going to be available to you. So you don't get this big old flash and, got to reapply, got to retreat, got to go into every, I make a lot of trips across this field, try to keep this thing green and growing. This will kind of extend that and help you on those lines. And that's the point, is to let's preserve its nitrogen, because it's subject to loss. Like, it'll hold it, yeah, it'll hold it in somewhere so that you don't lose it, because there's a lot of loss mechanisms, and we're trying to put a stop gate on it. We want to try to keep this thing and keep it last as long as we can. Real quick, just kind of for reference, on here, the UFC is untreated. So this is a pretty stout trial. They just planted corn, no fertilizer, and he still shelled almost 140 bushel. That's pretty awesome there. In these trials, where they did add, obviously add the fertilizer to urea in this case, they got the yield increases as we expected, but the new charge, with just that one active in it, was pretty stout compared to some other products. It's got 3 or 4 actives in it, so it's a very good product, and we've had this on the market for quite a while. But it's an idea to say, I like to extend, improve the quality of our hay, improve the quality of our pastures using this. By keeping the nitrogen that I put on, let me hang on to it, because that's a lot of dollars we want to keep. So I do happen to have some forage data. The light green bar is Bermuda grass, then we have ryegrass, and then fescue. What this number represents is, for example, let's say fescue at the far right. It's 14% better than the check without anything. So where we treated our urea with the in-charge, we increased our yields 14%. So that's pretty good. So and then if you had the Bermuda, it was 16%. In the ryegrass, and I believe that was annual ryegrass. On that, it was 14, not perennial. So, but there were increases on that. And grasses in general love nitrogen. They'll just take it, just pretty much all you can pour on them. Same for potassium. They love that. But in this case, it's if we can extend and spread out that fertilizer, that nitrogen on there, to make it last as long as we can, and you can get it, then that's what we're looking for. Any questions on the nitrogen piece? Well, that's one product. The next one is focus on phosphorus. Again, we're putting our manures on, and there's some phosphorus in there, but it's very quickly tied up. The one most difficult thing, saw that a while ago. The most difficult thing is with the phosphorus is that we have a very small area where it's most available. You get on either side of that, there's chemical reactions in the soil where it's not available. It gets tied up, and the plants may never even get a hold of it until way later, or much later. So do we have any products out here, such as Avail, and I got one other, that will help any of the phosphorus that goes on, like your DAP, MAP, Triple Super, any of those, we put those on, can we keep that in the available form for the plant so it doesn't get tied up? Especially if we're dealing with, say, it's more likely acidic soils, but it's very challenging. And the only thing about phosphorus is, if you just did nothing, I'm just going to put it on, and we'll just take my chances. You may only get 30% of that. So if I put 100 pounds out, 30 pounds only made it to the plant. Well, what if the plant needed 60? And as that soil sample earlier said, I need 90. So that's a lot of fertilizer. We really don't need to get tied up. So on here, this is just in general, from 20 to 35% of any phosphorus is available to the plant, regardless of what we do or what we add. That's it. That's the soil chemistry, and that's just the way it is. The rest of it, you either got iron, aluminum, calcium, or magnesium that's binding to it. And at some day down the road, it may be available. You put it on, and very little goes through the plant. To change all that, that's where we would use Avail. And Avail is a product that you would use at 2 quarts per ton. You would basically, well, that's done at the fertilizer house, but they would treat your phosphorus source, blend it with your other, whatever combination you're looking for, your ureas or your other potassiums or K-mags or whatever you're going with, and run it with those, and goes on the field, and you protected that phosphorus. You have now made that available to the plant now and later on down the road where it really counts. So that's that one piece. This also has that exchange technology, the polymer. It is different from the nitrogen source, and that particular product will prevent the other cations from touching. So it keeps that pretty much shielded away. Whereas on the nitrogen source, we want to hang on to it and lock it up and keep it spread out throughout the summer there. Go ahead. Yeah, it's a great example. That's what we're doing. Yeah, we're keeping all the positive away from our phosphorus, because phosphorus is negatively charged. And so hence is why when we put it in soil, you immediately get a reaction. Makes it kind of tough and difficult for the plant to get a hold of. Real quick data, we've had this for 7+ years. In a given year, or if you look at multiple years, let's just focus on 7 years of data, all compiled in those 2 little bars, we have a 5 bushel increase. Now this is on corn, but in other grasses, you'll get a response. In other broadleaves, you get a response. So the product does really well. Here's 2 examples. Here's alfalfa, just kind of give you a perennial legume. There was a almost 20% increase in yields. That's good, because we've kept that phosphorus from being tied up. It was available to that plant. And then on the fescue, there was almost an 8% increase. So, all right. Our next one, let's take it to the next level. So what if we protected our phosphorus? We made our fertilizer blend, we put it on, but we have a lot of phosphorus in the soil. I want to take advantage of that to really extend, so I have all summer for phosphorus to be available. Not the very front, but there at the tail end where it counts as well. So if you look at the amount of phosphorus that's in the soil, there are some soil analysis you could take, and you'd be amazed. You go, oh my gosh, why am I fertilizing? But you don't have access to it. The plant doesn't have access to it. This is not available. You go over here, this is within a year, you may get half of that. But what the plant gets is that little tiny circle. I mean, it's a tiny amount in a given year, but that's usually never enough. And so how can we make that bigger? I want to move closer to that middle circle. I want to be a little bit more so that I do have more phosphorus for the rest of the year. So there's a lot of chemistry going on, much more than there is with the nitrogen. But we do have this product called Free Up, which will protect what you put on, and then it will solubilize the phosphorus in the soil. Now I had, so when I said that, I had I believe it was a grower in Florida, and he goes, I don't want that stuff. It's going to dissolve all the phosphorus in the ground. It's going to leach out, and I'm going to get in trouble. It's not removing that much. It's giving you enough to spoon feed that plant to the, throughout the summer. It's not that much, even though you may say, well, how many pounds? And we can't answer that question, but it does give you a nice little boost so that you do get some nice yield increases. So what we're doing is telling the bacteria that you have in your soil, and you have the biggest advantage over a row crop guy, because you've always had a permanent cover. You have a very active soil health going on, and so this is a really great product for that option, because you can mineralize phosphorus. You have the head start, and the end game is much more pronounced than what a guy did or will have with his corn crop, because you don't disturb all that. What's going on? So one half of Free Up has got two pieces to it. So the first part is the polymer to protect what you treat, but then we have a stimulant that tells the bacteria in the soil. So this product does not contain enzymes. It does not contain bacteria. And so with that, it's going to stimulate what you already have pre-existing on your farm through an enzyme activity. And what it's going to do is break it down, and so you start releasing it. So let's, a lot of us, especially where we've used manures over the years, or we put on other phosphorus, and like I said, if we only getting 30 out of the 100 we put on, I want to take advantage of what I pay for. And so that's what this is kind of helping you do that. Here's one example. This is for reference. We've had many more years past this. This is just one little slide deck that I retrieved for you. But there was a nice yield bump. Now in corn, if you think of it, if you chop in silage, if corn ears half of that, if you got that much bump, imagine the rest of that stalk. So there's a nice increase in the amount of tonnage that you can get off of a silage crop, or haylage if you're doing that. So there's something to think about on this particular product, putting it on your fields. All right, any questions on phosphorus? And the last one I have is on micronutrients. And a lot of folks, regardless of what they're growing, I mean, even the apple guys, the grape guys used to say micronutrients, and they start looking at the clouds. This is something we don't need to forget. Thinking back on that other chart where you're looking at, do I really need micronutrients? Yes. Will the pH work with me on getting them? No. Do I need to put micronutrients out every year? It depends. Probably yes. Back to the soil sample. Where are we? What do we need to make changes? And so early on, this is corn as an example, but in general, iron, manganese, and zinc are needed early. That kicks that plant off. And as you're aware, zinc and phosphorus have a nice little relationship. One helps the other. If you have phosphorus, it helps the zinc. Zinc helps with the enzyme activities. It helps with growing roots. If you have more roots, you can take in more phosphorus. So those two really work. It's a hand in a glove combo. As we get a little bit further on down, then we get into those same micros, but then copper and boron start becoming really something we need to have available. And you get to the very tail end, if you're doing anything that's flowering or putting seed heads or anything like that, copper and boron are super critical. That's usually never available. Well, we kind of run out at that point. So is there any ways or anything out there you can think of so that I could put on a micronutrient and it actually lasts all year? Well, we have a product like that. So, but again, come back to our chart. Again, well, we see this a lot today, so it must be important. So with this, on the micro piece of this, these are metals. They love it to be acidic. So it's kind of tricky as to, well, where in the doggone, where do I need these fields to be? Do I need to be at 6.5? Do I need to be at 6? Do I need to be at 7? And so we like the 6.5. There's been a lot of research. 6.5, 6 is a good place to be in that field. And that way you don't tie up this is available, and you don't have a lot of issues. But it depends on what you're growing. And so that does vary. So again, go back and have some really good conversations about where do I need to be on this field with this particular crop that I'm growing. We had a chart earlier talking about the samples that the co-op had taken, and it's showing that they're below. Here's the whole nationwide. And Tennessee, the way to interpret this is it says just for zinc, 65% probability that if you put it on, you'll get a response. So it's like, oh, I don't need zinc on there. You probably do. And if you do put it on, you will get a response, and then you'll get a yield increase. You'll improve quality. So it is something to really consider. But you don't know how much you need until you sample. So it's one of those, well, just tell me how much I need to put on. I don't know. What's your pH? Because that's the tricky part, is if I put the zinc on and the pH is really acid, then we're good, because it likes acid soils. However, if you're at a pH 7 or 8, it's all tied up with calcium, and you'll never get it. It don't matter how much you put on. It won't happen. So it's really tricky on that. But again, have conversation with your agronomist. It's like, where do I need to be, and this is what I need to do. And y'all come up with a game plan. So our particular product that we have is MicroSync. It is a uniform, and obviously to the left here, and it's a uniform granule. Every granule is identical to its neighbor. So it's a very, very homogeneous type product. And guess what? It's got the polymer in it, so it's held. It allows it to be slowly released throughout the summer. And then to the right is just a visual for you guys for triple superphosphate. So the color is about the same, but look how much the uniformity in that triple super. It's all over the place. It could be a ground up powder. It could be large granules. It could be small. It's all over the place. When you mix just that triple super with your fertilizer blend, we're going to put it out on the field. That's awesome. That's great. With the MicroSync, it has the same density as the triple super. So when it spreads with it. It's not like, we have some trouble with some micros where the first pass through the field, there it all goes, or it's at the very last. This stays, when it's blended, it stays blended. So it's very well that it didn't matter if you treat at the fertilizer house and it's 20 miles down the road and it's down every pothole you can find, it does not sift out. It stays in the blend just like it left the fertilizer house. So it's pretty neat from that aspect. It's a very homogeneous product. We build them a little different. So a lot of times with micronutrients, you have sulfates. So right immediately available, but then at the same time, they're not available at the very tail end of the season. If I use a sucrate, it's going to slow release. So it's got a double slow release. So the polymer is one thing, and then the way the form it's used is another. You'll have other micronutrients that are oxides and things like that, chlorides, and those take forever to break down, sometimes years to break down. One thing I want to put out here with this product, this is for this season. This is for availability this season. This is not meant to soil build. And a lot of times you start looking at soil samples and go, oh my gosh, I got to have this much. This product is made for supplementing. If you need a soil build and increase those levels, there are other products for that. But I would use this as an idea. If you need micros, and it's probably going to be zinc or boron, then this is a product to certainly think about. Some pictures that one thing that's neat is, do I have to incorporate this in the ground? No, put it on the surface. It's fine. We're no-till. We're in pasture. We don't tear up stuff. Put it on top of the ground. As you get rainfall or a very heavy dew, it'll start blooming. It'll open up. It's not like it dissolves right there and that's it. So your root intercept is not right there. This actually gets bigger when it kind of falls back apart. So it's a granule. It's a powder. And as you get water to it, it'll just open up. So you have actually a larger area that you're working with. So if you have an individual granule that goes out, you add water, rainfall, it's pretty much larger than what it was. Again, it has that same technology. We use this on the flip side. So with the micronutrients, they are cations, they're positively charged. This particular product's got copper and zinc in it. And with that combo, we bind it to our exchange resin, and it holds it, and then gradually it gets dissolved off. And then because it's a sucrate based with some of them, then that slowly gets released. Hence is where I put it on, and I'm good for 9 months. Pretty neat thing. But again, this is not meant for soil building, but it's intended for, let's take care of the crop needs this year. And this could go for, if you have tobacco, it's an idea. You got corn, beans, it's an idea. You got wheat, go for it. Knock yourself out. Pasture, absolutely think about it. Consider it. There's no dust. It's homogeneous. Every granule is just like its neighbor. You just blend it like you normally would. Treat it just like a potash product. The granule size, it spreads. Everything works great. A little bit of data. This chart's a little misleading. Here's 0. So we had a few places in these Illinois locations where it was below. You'll have that, but the bulk of it was a positive return. In this case, it was a 5 bushel increase on corn here. I just put a little soybean picture in here to kind of show you that you do get a plant response. It does, you do get, it's not like I put a micro on there and you don't see anything. You actually can see some visual with this. And we have a whole lineup of combinations. I don't know if you got a particular one that you have in-house. I wish I had, I have some samples, but I changed vehicles. I don't have it. You got the Pro, okay, which is the go-to type product, but we have a lot of other options. We're currently trying to build a microsync boron, and we're having trouble with that. So, but he'll figure it out. That's all I have. Thank you for your attention. Any other questions? Thank you for the questions. Appreciate it.